I went to the hospital and saw a doctor because I wasn't really feeling well. And the doctor decided to give me penicillin. That's just a normal practice, prescribe something with penicillin, get better. The only thing is that the doctor didn't realize that I am allergic to penicillin.
Same here.
So what ended up occurring is I got rashes all over my body and all these different things happened, right? Now, in a hospital, that's considered a medical error. So in the past, a nurse or a practitioner or staff member, they would just write down that a medical error occurred on a piece of paper and they would manually give it to a file manager. So we saw a gap in this and we created this technology in order to report on these incidents. And you would be so surprised how many medical errors happen in the hospital. I mean, from someone supposed to be getting an operation on their right leg and it happens on their left, like things like that. All those different errors that occur around the globe. And so our software basically reports this information in real time. So on the front end, really, it looks like a web form, but in the back end, it's very robust. Now, how does that even equate to the fact that we're here today? Well, we have built this software. Originally, it was built in Delphi, and then what we did is we migrated and we built it in C#.net. So the back end is C#.net and SQL, and then now our newest technology in the front end is we're using a JavaScript framework called Ember that we're using in the front end. We just feel that it's better for what we're doing for the future. All that to say is this, is that we constantly look for great software developers. It's just a part of who we are as an organization. But more than that, what we figured is this: we don't want to just look for software developers. We actually want to sincerely be a part of the .NET community. So that's why I'm actually here today. It's not because we're specifically hiring, because to be honest with you, we actually hired 4 developers this year and we're done for the year. But next year we might be looking, and that's great, but we actually want to embed ourselves in the .NET community. So when I met Ken at DevTeach, one of the things I was like, yeah, I really actually just want to sincerely be a part and get to know some of the developers that are out there and what you're doing. And regardless of if you work for RL or whatever the deal is, we just want you to know that we really, really are open to the community. So that's why we're here. So with that said, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I think I've done quite a bit of that. But in the back, I brought mugs for you. Really, really cool mugs, actually. I'm sorry I didn't bring any coffee or David's tea or anything like that for you too. But I brought some mugs. I really would love for you. Please take them from me. They are yours. They're just for you. I really would love for you to do that. And after the meetup, I'd love to just chat with you, or during some form of networking. Just chat, just see what you're up to, and we can kind of go from there. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dean. So Dean will stick around. He'll be here for the break, so we can you can touch base with him then. If you need to get a hold of RL Solutions, or you want to find out more before you talk to Dean, the website, the Twitter address, or the LinkedIn page is right there, so you can investigate them. All right. As you can probably tell, I am not Lori. I know it's hard to tell, but if you guys remember last year, we made the announcement that we were going to do a little bit of a switch, and Lori was going to focus more on the Xamarin sessions, and I am going to focus more on the .NET sessions. So that entails speaking tonight, but it also entails actually making sure that the group is going to run on the .NET sessions. So I'm going to be your host tonight and the rest of the season. So tonight we have Dean. He's going to come and present. He's going to sponsor the meetup. I'm going to get right into the presentation because Obi and I did this presentation last week. And even though we did really well, we kind of have the gift of the gab, so we actually ran overtime. So I'm going to try and get as much of this done as possible. So this is Intro to ASP.NET. And I'm going to do the ASP.NET Core side with an intro to .NET. Obi's going to focus on Entity Framework. If you guys have questions along the way, please feel free to raise your hand, ask, just shout our names, and we'll take them as we go. We will do a 10-minute break. I will try to be conscious of the time. I'm probably going to finish around 7:10, take a 10-minute break, and then let Obi start, just to be conscious that we need to be out of here by 8:30, and then we still need to do announcements and prize draws and all of that. So, As I said, my name is Ken Cinerelli. I'm the co-organizer of this group. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in Visual Studio. My day job used to be a programmer writer. Now I'm manager of testing and deployment for my company. So we're doing DevOps and that kind of stuff right now. So if you need to get a hold of me, you can reach me through Twitter, blogs, LinkedIn, all of that there. So for the agenda, we'll look a little bit at .NET Core. We'll talk about what open source is and how that affects .NET Core and the driving force for that. ASP.NET Core plus MVC, some tooling, and some web APIs. Just a quick survey, how many people have touched .NET Core, played around with it? Awesome, you guys can help me out there. So, .NET Core, 10,000 foot view. So this is what .NET looks like today. So not much has changed. A little bit in the middle, but on the bottom we still have our common runtime compilers, we have CLRs, we have our JITs all on the bottom. Where it's kind of split and we have the split brain mentality now is we have this in the middle here. So we have .NET Framework 4.6, still being developed, still fully functional, still battle hardened, tested. Microsoft is still developing for it. It's not going away anytime soon. So you guys can relax. It's not going to be a .NET Core world. That's still where Microsoft is focusing its work. On the .NET Core side, though, if you want to develop for Windows or UWP or Mac or Linux, the .NET Core side is now where you're going to be living. So this is modular libraries for these different OSs and runtimes. On top of that, you're going to have your core CLR and your .NET Native, and you're going to see that split down the middle as well carries up to the green line. So if you want to do WPF or Windows Forms or ASP.NET Core, ASP.NET 4 or Core 1, you're on the left. Again, if you want to do Core 1.0 and Universal Web Apps, you're going to be on the right. And again, you might be wondering why there's both of them there. We'll talk about that in a second. So a quick overview of what .NET Core is. It is a subset of the .NET Framework. Again, the term core is just the core component. So a lot of the stuff you might find and use in the .NET Framework does not exist in core. System.drawing, any of the graphing tools, stuff like that will not exist in core. It's also modularized, so everything is available via Nuget. So it's very package oriented. You can either release it, and we'll talk about releasing in a minute, but you can actually release it as one fully compiled application just for you, or you can go the other way and have it more portable, and we'll talk about what that means as well. The nice thing is that you can update your apps independently. You do not need to rely on the framework releases. So if you want to update your app, you don't need to rely on 4.7. You can actually just stay on ASP.NET 4.6 if you want. And those frameworks are independent of what your app is. And as it says, .NET Core will run on Linux, Windows, OS X, and when they say Linux, they mean like all different types of Linux, CentOS, Linux Mint, Ubuntu, all of that, as well as the different versions of OS X. So this is the way that Microsoft's going, and this is what they want you to think about as you start working towards .NET Core. This is what .NET is today, and I'm bringing this up because Microsoft just made a couple of big announcements. If you guys have seen them, if you haven't, then this will just be a quick overview of what this means. Right now, if you want to write for .NET Framework, you got a VCL. If you want to write for .NET Core, you got a core library. And if you want to write for Xamarin, you got the monoclass library. Three different libraries that you need to learn. Microsoft realizes that this is a problem. And what they've started to do is they're going to start to bring all of that together. The reason being is that you need to learn all of these different platforms. You need to master the 3+1 base class libraries. All the APIs are not the same, and different implementations on each. So what this means is that you need to align all your different ship cycles. So you need to figure out what different BCLs or base class libraries you need to start working towards even before you start development. So Microsoft recognizes that this is a problem, and they've kind of come up with this .NET standard library. So there's one library to rule them all. Big article was just released on this. It will be coming down the pipe probably in the fall. You'll start seeing more and more of this being released. And this .NET standard library kind of brings everything back together like it was early .NET, when you had just one standard library that you needed to know to work in any of these. So this .NET standard library for, as I said, for graphing or for imaging and all of that will be the same across all of these different frameworks. So the .NET framework, the Core, and Xamarin. So if you start hearing about .NET Standard Library, that's what you're going to start. That's what this is, and that's what you're going to start hearing about a lot. So, and again, the .NET innovation is underneath the actual framework level. It all still works with Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, and the app model innovation is not being as focused on. They're going to be working more on the bottom layers. The benefits of this, obviously, same APIs. You only need to master one library, and the .NET Standard can grow, and you don't need to update the actual top-level platforms. So that's kind of nice, and they can just keep feeding those bottom levels as they start adding more innovations. So jumping back to .NET Core and what this means for that, when we talk about .NET Core, we're talking about two parts. So we're talking about runtime libraries, the CLR, the libraries, the compilers, and we're talking about the tooling. So the tooling has actually been independent of the updates for the runtime libraries. So that means that when they focus on the tooling, generally the runtime libraries are not focusing on as much, and then they kind of swap again. So they are kind of leapfrogging each other in how they're distributing some of this stuff, but you will see improvements along the way with all of this as well. Differences between .NET Framework and .NET Core. Some of this might be relevant or just plain for you, but it's kind of nice to see it again here. So everything is centralized in .NET Framework. .NET Core, again, when we talk about distribution, we'll talk about distributed with each app. Updates, you get one big update of the .NET Framework. If you do not want to do an update on .NET Core, it's up to you. You can update the NuGet packages when you want because everything is compiled into your application anyways if you choose to go that route. Again, .NET Framework, if you only want to focus on Windows, then you can stick with the .NET Framework. However, if you want to focus on Windows, OS X, or Linux, you want .NET Core. And base class library, again, everything's in the BCL, and eventually everything will be in this .NET Standard library. So, if you want to know more about what this, what the differences are, you can actually start and look at that GitHub article. So, the driving force of this is open source. There's strange times, obviously, at Microsoft right now. It was known as the Death Star, the mothership, like for a reason, because it just kind of obliterated everything in its path, right? It just took everything out. So now all of a sudden they embraced open source. Microsoft loves open source. SQL Server can now run on Linux. They founded the .NET Foundation with Xamarin, which is now part of Microsoft, and all these different companies to kind of enhance the .NET framework. And now all of a sudden they love open source. So, and you can kind of see that too as they start bringing in all of these different items. NuGet package, NPM is now on there, and Bower, and Grunt, and Gulp, and these are all baked right into Visual Studio 2015. So if you want to do anything with Node or with JavaScript, or you want to run some of these task schedulers, you can do all of that right from 2015. So, and they all work with ASP.NET Core. So you don't have to worry about, do I go OpenStack or do I go Windows or Microsoft based? You can actually have the best of both worlds. Yes, sir?
How about Webpack?
Webpack?
Is supported?
Yes. Yeah. So, when we talk about responsive plugin free, again, this isn't the web anymore. This is not, your father's web. This is the web. So all of these devices are web enabled, and eventually this will be the web. So smart fridges, smart cars, smart utilities. I actually work at a company right now where we're doing smart hydrants, so they can tell if there's a leak in the system. And we're also building, or we're partnering with a company that does smart pucks, which you can attach to a machine, and it'll sense vibration, heat, if it's being worked too hard, all of that. And all of that's being fed back through IoT into databases that we can stream, that we can run metrics against. So all of this kind of, as you can dream it, it's being built right now. So that's kind of the nice thing. So that's .NET Core, focusing on ASP.NET Core now. You might have seen ASP.NET 5. It's now been renamed, or was renamed to ASP Core 1.0. You might still see some references to ASP.NET 5. If you do, just substitute the word ASP Core, ASP.NET Core 1.0. The reason they went to the new branding was the same reason that they thought, let's go Windows 9 when they didn't really give it much thought, is ASP.NET 5 is obviously bigger than 4.6. But it's not, because it's actually smaller than 4.6, because it's a subset of 4.6. So they started going at 5, and people started getting confused and saying, oh, wow, I can't wait to upgrade my clients to ASP.NET 5. As like, whoa, 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 you know, hold on here. That's not what this is. So they had to kind of take a step back and do that whole ASP.NET Core 1.0. So this is what what they're starting with. When we talk about ASP.NET 4.6 and ASP.NET Core 1.0, you can see that the ASP.NET Core 1.0 bleeds into the .NET framework for 4.6. So you can actually build your ASP.NET 4.6 on top of .NET Framework 4.6, or you can build ASP.NET Core 1.0 apps on .NET Core 1.0. So if you still want to target Mac, Linux, or Windows, you're on this side. So if you have opened Visual Studio 2015 in the last little while, you'll see that ASP.NET Core 1.0 templates live in the core, and they also live in the web. And you can intermingle. So if you actually want to build a PCL, for lack of a better word, that actually runs on 4.6, you can still do that using Core. And that's where that kind of crossover comes in. It can get a little confusing. This is really the only confusing part about Core, and that you can build it for both frameworks at the current moment. So. Roadmaps. We are right here, so we're at 1.0. Actually, we're at 1.01. They just released a little minor update a couple of days ago, about a week ago. Technically, 1.10 though is going to be the next major release, and that'll be in the fall. They haven't set an exact date. Expect around November, and so that'll be the next iteration of that. Signal R will not be in there, nor will F#. They had kind of announced those previously, but those will be in 1.20. So 1.10 is just going to be a few of them, some more updates on around routing, I believe, and stuff like that. So going back to this, when we talk about the .NET and the .NET framework, at this arrow point right here, this is ASP.NET 2016. So right here, this is where all of this now fits in on that. So when we talk about 4.6 on the left, we're still talking about ASP.NET 4.6 running under the .NET framework. ASP.NET Core 1.0, again, bridges across the .NET framework, is also runs on .NET Core 1.0. You can see right here that .NET Core 1.0 will run MVC plus Web API. If you need to do web forms, how many people love web forms? Do web forms? Nobody? MVC 5.x, Web API, you're still living in the .NET Framework world. And you can see that .NET Core is pretty much a C# only product. VB.NET, are there any VB.NET developers here solely? Okay, so you're going to be without .NET Core for a bit. It's in the plans. They are supposed to migrate it over, but it's not going to be for a while yet. So it might be 1.2 or 1.3. The reasons you want to do ASP.NET Core 1.0, totally modular. Obviously, everything is Nuget based, so you can build and deploy everything with all your packages already in it. Faster development cycle. You don't need to do a rebuild or build all the time. If you want to make some changes, you can just save your changes, and it automatically updates as you go. If you're hosting on the cloud, you can actually push right from Core up to the cloud, much like you can with Visual Studio 2015. Now, any of the web products, you can actually push all of your stuff right up to the cloud. It's all seamless. Choose your editors. So there's a slide coming up about the different types of editors. Any kind of Omni-Sharp editor, you can actually build ASP.NET Core with, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. It's all open source. Again, strange times at Microsoft. Microsoft loves open source. And this is all open source. So if you feel like you want to contribute to ASP.NET Core at any point, you can actually pull down the code and start looking at it. If you want to contribute to the documentation around ASP.NET Core, you're open to do that as well. Microsoft has actually open sourced all of the documentation around visuals or around .NET, ASP.NET, even like Edge and all of that. So if you actually you feel like you find a typo in some of the GitHub articles, you can actually make a change and do a pull request, and they'll actually accept your change if you want to make it say something different. So it's obviously cross-platform, and it's super fast. It's actually one of the fastest frameworks out there. They like to brag that it's actually faster than Node right now. So on some kind of metric scale, it actually is much faster than a lot of other frameworks. So technically, what is it? It is a console application. So everything generally is run from the console. You're going to have a startup main in your project. So it's not a traditional web application per se. And within RC1, it did have the startup .cs class, and then they kind of flipped around. It's kind of what they're doing now with the project JSON versus the CS proj debate, and what's going on with that. And if people don't know what that is, at one point they were CS proj. I believe in RC1 they had a for your configs they had a CS proj. They went to a project JSON file. Everyone said great, and then when they went to RC1 or to the core 1 just after RC2, they said no, we're going back to CS proj. So they haven't really announced a migration pattern for people who have started building stuff with Project JSON to get them back into CS proj. The reason being is that they need to be back on CS proj because it was had breaking compatibility with some of the other projects. So they thought, oh, let's make everything JSON based, but then they kind of had to take a back step and go, whoa, that's gonna screw up everything else. So we need to go back to CS proj. So that's kind of the debate that's going on now, and people are all up in arms and saying, you know, how's this going to happen? Why are you guys doing this to me? So, when we talk about the features of ASP.NET Core hosting, so there is no dedicated host that you need to subscribe to. So IIS is available, or IIS Express if you want. You can use Kestrel. You can use startup files if you want. There's no baked-in host that you need to rely on. If we talk about middleware, there's obviously routing baked in as well. If you're an MVC developer, routing is there for you. Authentication, you can get all types of authentication. Static files, so if you want to actually browse to static files, you can do that. You can get diagnostics out. Everything under diagnostics, everything is Application Insights configured. So if you're actually building with it in Visual Studio, you can use Application Insights. Does anybody here actually use Application Insights in any of their products? No. Okay. It's a great product, but I wasn't sure if people are actually using it or not. Error handling, session-based. You can do cores, localization. Dependency injection is available through ASP.NET Core, so if you want to use Ninject or any of those third-party tools, you can do that. Configuration, logging. So if you want to do log4net, you can actually get those in as well, and identity. So all of this is available as part of the ASP.NET Core features that you can actually use.
What's cores?
Cores, the cross-object.
Cross-version reference.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so it's a big thing now within ASP.NET. Everyone's talking about cores. So what I talked previously about editors and IDEs, how can you actually use ASP.NET Core? This is all the IDEs you can actually use. So you can use Visual Studio 2015, you can use Visual Studio Code as long as it's a C# version, or an OmniSharp enabled editor. And basically OmniSharp is an open source foundation that is striving to get IntelliSense into other editors. So if you do Atom or Brackets or Emacs or Sublime or Vim, actually Visual Studio Code is an OmniSharp enabled editor. If you use any of these, you can actually start developing in Visual Studio Code without having to change over to Code or 2015 or whatever it is that you want to do. So what can you do presently? MVC web apps, web API apps, console apps. If you want to make a .NET Core compatible class library, or what's known as a portable class library or a pickle, you can do that as well. Signal R and web pages are coming next. As I said, they won't be 1.1, they're going to probably be 1.2. They're also talking about support for F# somewhere down the road, and that'll probably be after VB.NET. So when we talk about MVC, we're talking about MVC plus Web API plus web pages. So this is what we talk about when we talk about ASP.NET Core MVC. So Web API is actually baked right in as part of the MVC stuff. So the MVC, you can do MVC projects, removes duplication, web UIs and web APIs. Everything's built on .NET or ASP.NET Core, and it supports .NET Core. So any of the stuff that's in the .NET Core framework, you can actually pull in. I said before, you can run it on IIS. It's not a requirement. You can self-host as well. So, or if you want to use Kestrel or any of this. And if anybody's doing dependency injection, you can use integration with that as well. I mentioned before about a deployment. There's actually two main models for deployment. You can go portable or you can go self-contained. It all depends on how you want to deploy or distribute your applications. And these are things that you need to think about actually before you start putting your fingers on the keyboard. If you're building an application and you're going to deploy it to 100 or 1,000 desktop clients, this is something you need to think about versus maybe deploying it to the web or deploying it to, or you're just going to use it in another project. These are the types of things that you need to think about. So when we talk about portable, it is the default application. It does require that .NET Core be installed on the target machine though. So if you're going to deploy something on 1,000 clients or wherever, that's one of the considerations that you need to think about. However, it is portable between the installations of .NET Core. So if you want to move it from one machine to the next, or a new employee comes in and you want to actually say, hey, I want to give them this product, or sorry, this project, you can actually do that. You do not need to decide up front which OSs you're going to use. You can actually make your changes in the project JSON and eventually the CS project. So you can actually make your changes on the fly with a portable application. The reason being is that you're not using any of the Nuget packages. You're going to actually call it to Nuget and get those packages. So you're not reliant on making sure that you have all of this up and running to begin with. The flip side of that is self-contained apps. So all of the dependencies, including the .NET Core runtime, is part of the application. So again, if you're maybe making this a mobile application or whatever, you've got to think about how big is that footprint. Like how big is, or if you're going to ship this to somebody, how big is the footprint of the compiled application before you actually start building this, that you need to start thinking about this. So obviously the app will be larger because you're going to have all your dependencies and the .NET Core framework will be in there, the runtime. So, and you need to make an explicit choice within your application while you're in development. And this is probably very small to read, but you can see down here that I've actually, in the runtimes here, I've actually expressly said that I want to run it on Windows 10 and OS X. So I've expressly said which ones I actually want to run it on. No such dependencies or runtimes over on the other side on the portable, because I can change that at whim and keep going if I want to target whatever I want. So think about that. If you go away with anything and you say, yes, I'm going to start building an ASP.NET Core, think about the endpoint first before you start putting fingers to keyboard. This is probably one of the biggest items that you're going to run into within .NET Core, because you do not want to get to the end and kind of realize, hey, some of this stuff isn't going to work, even though I just spent 20 or 30 hours building this. So, when we talk about tooling, so we talk about the front end, all those changes. We're going to talk about tooling changes now, and we're going to talk about the CLI. So, what's new in ASP.NET Core? So we have the .NET CLI, SDK, and IDE. So if people don't know, you can actually run it. You can actually build .NET Core projects either way. You can run it from the command line, or you can actually work within Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, or however it is you want to. Also within ASP.NET Core, there's something called tag helpers. We're not going to look at this too much, but basically they've cleaned up a lot of the Razor syntax, made it so much nicer for you. Razor was a great thing when it first came out, and then they just started throwing more and more stuff in it, and then all of a sudden it was just like a dog's breakfast, and people didn't know what the hell was going on anymore. So they kind of cleaned it up, and they made it look really nice. I'm not going to talk about it too much. If you want to know more about tag helpers, there's tons of articles online all about tag helpers. IIS support is baked in. Again, you don't have to use IIS if you do not want to. You can use IIS Express, you can use Kestrel, you can do whatever it is you want to do. If you want to push your apps to the cloud, if you want to push to a VM, if you want to use Azure App Service, you want to use Azure, so Azure App Service, you can do it on Azure websites. Any of that, you can host it in the cloud. It's all native. It'll all run up there. And if you're feeling like you want to use Docker or work with Docker, you can actually use the Docker tools in Visual Studio and start deploying to Docker. Yes, Mike.
Does that run? Does 1.0 do you have to get an update for Windows containers, or does that just work out of the box?
It should just work right out of the box. It's basically like a plugin for Visual Studio, and yeah, it should just work right out of the box.
For some reason, has full Docker has full Windows support too.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So what I did these slides maybe about a month ago. So yeah. So some of this stuff it should be mostly in date, but yeah, if it's not, just not in. When we talk about the SDK, SDK obviously gives you enough software to build the app. And you get both the .NET Core tools and a copy of .NET Core. So if you actually want to download the SDK, here's the link. I will actually post these on our meetup group afterwards so that you guys can actually download the slides and get all the links from there. But this is what you need to download the SDK. So enough of me blabbing. Let's have a quick look. As I said, I'm probably going to quit around 7:10, so just to give will be enough time to do his talk on EF Core. So, but we'll have a quick look here, and if I type .net here, oh, not .net. How about I type .net? You can see here that it's. Let me see if I can. You can see here that it's come back and said, hey, you need to maybe give me a little bit more to work on. So from the command line, you can see, oops, that's not what I want to do. You can see here that I have all types of commands that I can actually run with. So I have a verbose command if I want to add that in. Here are the common commands, or the order of commands that you want to run, though, when you're actually starting to work with .NET Core. So you want a new instance of .NET Core. You want to restore the dependencies. And you can either run a build and then a run, or if it's never been run, you can actually just click run and it will actually do the build and then run for you. So if I were to, oops, where did I go? If I were to do this, and we'll make a directory, like this, and so I'm gonna, I just CD'd into that new directory. I just called it ctt vnug to get a new project up and running. .net. Thank you. To get a new project up and running, all I need to do is type .net space new, and it's actually going to create a brand new project for me. And we'll go in and we'll have a look at what this actually looks like. So you can see here that it's actually created a brand new C# project for me, just by typing that one line. If I were to browse over to that project, I'm going to have a project JSON file in there. And I'm also going to have a program.cs file. And the program.cs file, all it's going to do when we initially run this, is just going to spit out a hello world. So again, it's just kind of enough to get you running, up and running, and you can see what's actually happening. Now, if I were to open this project JSON file, just so you can kind of see what's in there, within the project JSON file, it knows that I'm depending on this specific build of core. So again, if I want to make this portable and I want to ship this around to different people, and so I can share this application, I need to make sure that we're all running the same version of core. It's great if I have a self-contained app, because it's all built in and everything's good to go. The emit entry point equals true is just means that this is actually going to be an exe, and this is the entry point for the application. If you were building a class library that you wanted to call into, and I'll show you that in a second, that emit entry point, you could just blow that away, because you're not really going to be running that class library.
Are you running like admin?
I'm sorry?
Have to be admin to
No,
run
this isn't elevated permissions at all. No, I'm running a normal command prompt. So now I could do a .NET build and a .NET run, but I'm just going to do a .NET run, and oops, so does not have, oh yes, I skipped a very important step. Because this is all Nuget based, I have to restore the Nuget packages. So a .NET restore, and again, if I had just gone out to the help files, it would walk me through all of those steps. You're going to see that it's going to start restoring the packages that I need for this project. Now, if I do a .NET run, oops, what's the problem? Unable to load service. Why? What's this problem? Error occurred while sending a request. Oh, I wonder if I don't have. Yeah, I don't think I have internet. I was trying to get that up and running before, and it was very flaky on me. Go. Oops. Is this thing gonna work or what? Would you believe me if it worked? And no. If I can't get this thing to go, I'm just gonna. Come on, connect.
Trying to connect to my phone, Ken?
Sure.
I'm connected to the internet.
It's okay, I got it covered here.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
just
nice.
need to agree to the terms and conditions. I think we should do that.
Yeah, I thought it would be.
Gonna launch a browser maybe first?
Thank you, Arlen. Let's see, this is Arlen to the rescue. See if that goes. Maybe still thinking about it, Arlen. No internet. Oh, man.
This is initial setup you have to do.
No! Well, not if you're
Internet is fundamental. So.
not if you're in unconnected Wi-Fi, right?
And you cannot work offline?
Nope. You can't restore packages offline either, apparently.
Maybe we'll try the libraries one again and then just open a web page and see if they show you an ending.
Yeah.
To redetermine. Is it here?
Oh, no. Wow. It does not like me. Okay. I'm not going to spend any more time with this because I want to make sure Obi has enough time, but I will flip over to when I have a new. How's that? Actually, this isn't gonna, well, this one will probably run. So let's have a look there. Effectively, what was happening there is all of those packages are being routed down into, and I will show you this in a second here, into my my documents folder under Nuget, under packages, and you can see it's downloaded all the packages in there. So every time you run a .NET Restore, it's actually going to pull the packages locally for you. So if you were to actually do a deployment on this, it's going to actually reach into this folder and pull those packages into your end product if you want to do a portable application. On the flip side now, if I actually go over to this other one here, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you this project. And this project is, where is it? This project is actually just called Count Characters. It's just, you can type in a string and it'll actually tell you the number of characters that exist within, the number of unique characters that exist within that string. Microsoft recommends that you use a source file and a test file as your upper level root folders whenever you're doing any project creation. So once I actually drill into this source folder, you can see this is where I'm starting to get the app and the lib. And so in my application, I would obviously have all my front end stuff, or if I want, and then in the library I can do all my back end logic. You can see in the back end here, I do have my class file and I have a project.json. If I were to go over to the app file within the project.json here, you can see that I actually have, so I still have the emit entry point is in there. I have the project, I have a target of count characters lib, so I'm telling my application that it's relying on the library. And again, this I just hard-coded this in. If you're working with Visual Studio, it's going to start making those connections for you. But because I was working in code, I actually had to hard-code some of that stuff in. As well, you can see the different versions too. Like I'm still working off of this 1.0 version in here, and it's expressly named within this file. So everything is pulled together at the top by something called the global JSON. And the global JSON, if I had a test folder in here, so if I had a source folder and I had a series of tests, I could have the test folder. I could actually do a restore right off the top level. So I could actually do a .NET restore right from this top level. And it would actually reach into both of those other projects and do the restore back for me. It can actually traverse that tree for me. I'm not going to do that because I don't want it to break. So let me just go in here and let's see if we can. Where am I here? Oh, it's count. Let's see if we can get this right. Yes, here we go. This is a test, and you can kind of see here what's. Make this a little bigger. So it popped up the line, said enter a phrase, and I said this is a test, and it's gone through and it's counted all of the ones and or the T's and the S's and the A's and that kind of thing. So this is a very basic program that you can actually run within .NET Core. So this is just a general application that's been kind of touted by Microsoft, and people have just kind of latched onto it. So this is a very basic project that I built with the .NET Core runtime. Very quickly on the other side, if I go File, New Project, I just want to show you quickly what this looks like here. So on the website, if you're building a web project, you can see I still have my .NET Framework if I want to target .NET Framework 4.6 items. And I also have my .NET Core apps and my Core web apps that are both in there as well. If I flip over to the Core projects, which are here, again, you can see I have a class library, or what used to be known as a portable class library. I can create a specific .NET Console application, or I have a .NET Core web application. So that's that difference. So you're going to see a web application on the .NET under .NET Core, and you're going to see a web application for .NET Core under web. And that's that kind of cross-platform, and it's all dependent on which one you want to build. Okay, so I'm going to just, oops, 5. So I talked about the IDE, talked about the IDE. If you don't want to use command line, if you figure out it's too much typing or whatever for me, you can actually, the best way to do .NET Core development is with the IDE. Just pull it up within Visual Studio and just start pulling it around. You can use the Nuget manager to get all the packages you need, and you're up and running in no time. So start playing around with .NET Core. And I just showed you what that looks like there.
So in Visual Studio, do you have the problem with restore or not?
No, because it's going to reach out. Nuget is taken care of for you. It's traditional Nuget, so it's going to take care of all of that for you. The only reason I'm having the problem with the restore is I don't have internet connectivity. So if I had internet connectivity, it would reach out and repair those packages, no problem. When we talk about web APIs in 4.6, we kind of have these two silos here. We have the happy people on the left, and we have those robots on the right who are reaching down into JSON and XML and the web API. And underneath it, we have a little bit of .NET Core. But in ASP.NET Core, API services are part of ASP.NET Core. And so when we look at this, we're actually looking at models and controllers. So we have our models, we have our controller. We're creating a little person class here with our, with our route of API controller. We have our person class up here. We're creating our IEnumerable list of person, and effectively, when we call out to it, now if I go back here, we have our 3 people. We have Chuck Norris, we have David Carradine, and Bruce Lee. You know, the trifecta of Kung Fu. What's that?
No John Skeet?
No, or Jet Li or anybody, right? So, and then you're going to call out and return these people based on the route. So what it's actually going to look like is you're going to call out to your API, you're going to call out to your person, and your person is going to be based on ID. So we pass in the person of 1, so we're going to get back Chuck Norris. So all of this is baked into ASP.NET Core for you, and you don't have to worry about it. So that was a very, very quick trip through .NET Core and ASP.NET Core. These are the documentations, or this is the documentations and the resources that you need to get. So everything's under ASP.NET. A lot of the demos and, sorry, not demos, but slides especially come from the ASP, the Webcams Training Kit, aka MS, Webcams Training Kit. So yeah, a lot of that stuff is there. That's actually a really great training kit that's been updated fairly recently by John Galloway, and they have lots of cool stuff in there. So yeah, I will take questions. Yes.
There's one other site that was put up recently, .net.
.net?
Yeah.
And what's that?
That's the site that's equal to all. Hank's going to put it up. So.
Oh right, yeah. So
It's very easy to remember.
Yeah.
Just-
.net, yeah, which has all the downloads and stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So .net is another good one. I believe if you go to get ASP.net, you can get the CLIs there and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's it for me. We're gonna take a short 10-minute break, and then I'll bring Obi up, and he can start talking about EF Core and what that means in relation to ASP.net. I'll be at the back. I'll be mingling. I can answer questions. I'm just trying to be conscious of the time because I know we're gonna need some time for announcements and stuff at the end. Please visit Dean at the back. Go grab a cup, say hello, thank him profusely for sponsoring the meetup, and yeah, we'll see you back here in like 10 minutes.